This will be tape number 10 of this 12-tape set of recordings made on the Serenity Sail and Big Book cruise. This talk was given on Friday morning, September the 2nd, 1988, while cruising north in the Caribbean Sea toward Miami, Florida. On this tape, Charley discusses Chapter 6, Into Action, Steps 6 through 11, or pages 76 through 88 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The approximate playing time for this recording will be 90 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Charley Parmley, and I'm a very grateful recovering alcoholic. Because I'm a member of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and by the grace of the power that I found in the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't found it necessary to take a drink for 6,883 days today, one day at a time, and for this I'm very grateful. And again, it's real nice for us all to be able to get together this morning and know where we were last night and know the things we did last night, know who we slept with or didn't sleep with last night, remember whether it was good or bad. I might tell one more story this morning about the Catholics again. It's a little joke I just love. I have offended one or two people with it, but I think this crowd, it won't bother them at all. It's the story again about a little Catholic boy who was reaching the age of puberty, and he decided one day to get into his mother's bedroom and try to see what goes on in life. And he was in there looking around, and he heard his mother coming down the hallway, and he thought, oh my God, I'm in trouble if she catches me in here. So he runs and he hides in the closet, shuts the door, and Mother comes in the bedroom, but Mother isn't by herself. She happened to have her boyfriend with her. And it's the middle of the afternoon, and Mother and boyfriend got to doing what mothers and boyfriends do in bedrooms in the middle of the afternoon, and all of a sudden, suddenly heard Father coming down the hallway. And Mother said to the boyfriend, my God, quick, hide in the closet. If he catches us, he'll kill us both. So the boyfriend gets in the closet and shuts the door, and after a while, the little boy says, sure is dark in here, isn't it? And the boyfriend said, oh, yeah, it is. And the little boy said, you know, I've got a baseball bat I've been wanting to sell. And he said, I believe you ought to buy that from me. And the boyfriend said, well, I guess so. How much you want for it? And he said, I want $20 for it. And the boyfriend said, well, that's a hell of a lot of money, but I guess it'll be all right. And a little while, the little boy said, and I've got a catcher's mitt that goes with that. And he said, I think you ought to buy it also. And the boyfriend said, how much? And he said, I want $20 for it too. And the boyfriend said, well, yeah, I guess that's all right. And after a while, the little boy said, and there's a ball goes with them, and then that makes a set, and you really need to buy the ball too. And the boyfriend said, I guess so. How much you want for the damn ball? And he said, I want $15. And the boyfriend said, okay. Now, the next day, the little boy is sitting in the living room, and he's counting his money. And his mother comes through, and she said, son, where in the world did you get all that money? And he said, Mama, I can't tell you where I got this money. And she said, you are going to tell me where you got the money. Where did you get that kind of money? And he said, Mother, I really can't tell you. And she said, by golly, you are. And she jerks him up, and she takes him down to church, and she throws him in the confessional. And after a while, the priest comes in and sits down, and nobody says anything for a while. And sooner or later, the priest, he said, my child, what is it you have on your mind? And the little boy said, sure is dark in here, isn't it? And the priest said, are you going to start that shit again? I told that in one place, and after, it must have been 2 or 3 weeks later, I got a letter from a fellow out in California, and he didn't like that at all. And he said, what I really didn't like about it is you told it in a Southern Baptist Protestant accent. And I wrote him back, and I said, well, most of us, after we've been in fellowship a while and worked the program, we get to where we can laugh at ourselves and laugh at our religions and all the other things we thought was so deadly serious to us. And I put a little note down at the bottom, and I said, P.S., a Catholic priest told me the joke. And he really did. Okay, yesterday we did a lot of work. We finished up on step 4. and we finished up on step 5, we were able to see through the inventory process the gross handicaps, those things that block us off from the sunlight of the Spirit. And we found those things by looking at the common manifestations of self. We looked at resentments. We looked at fears. We looked at our sexual conduct of the past. We looked to see that where we had harmed and hurt other people in that area. And we could see at the root of each one of those things that we ourselves, in the majority of the cases, had done something to set the ball rolling, which caused us to hurt people, and then they in turn would retaliate against us and create pain and suffering for us. And then we found that through that resentment process that we were able to transfer blame from ourselves to those other people and actually make ourselves believe that it was all their fault. And you know, today, if we're carrying resentment in our head today, we probably ought to examine it very closely, because it probably isn't the truth. Now, I thought it was the truth, and it was the truth as I could see it. But when I carefully looked at it, listed, analyzed it, to see the part that I had played in it, I began to realize that most of the things that I thought were true really were not true. And I found in all those things that I had developed a certain kind of personality, the selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, frightened, inconsiderate personality, and that if I didn't change those things, that sooner or later I'd go right back to doing the same old things, hurt people in the same old way, and they retaliate against me again, and then that creates more resentment, more fear, more shame, more guilt, and sooner or later, under those conditions, my mind begins to seek relief, and it always goes back to the idea of taking a drink. So it's not a question of whether I want to do these things or not. It's not a question of whether I'm going to enjoy doing them or not. The only question is, can I stay sober if I don't do these things? And I find for me, and I think most alcoholics have found the same thing, that we just cannot stay sober under those conditions. And I think that is the great tragedy in AA today. So many people coming to AA not working the program, coming to fellowship only, and trying to find a way to stay sober. And without working the program, they stay selfish, they stay dishonest, they stay frightened, they stay inconsiderate, and they keep on hurting people. And sooner or later, they end up going back to drinking every time. And they wonder, you know, what the hell happened? AA didn't work. Well, they didn't work AA is what really happened. They came to the fellowship, but did not participate in the program. We also could see last night why it was necessary for us to take step 5. The taking of step 5 with another human being who's knowledgeable about what we're trying to do, we not only get the good of, we'll say, confession or sharing with another human being, but we also get the advantage of that other human being being able to look at our inventory from an outside objective view and being able to view it a little more honestly than we could. And that other human being can help us pin down the exact nature of the wrongs. Not concerned really with how many times we did this or how many times we did that, but the real question is, why did we do it? You know, I can steal for a lot of different reasons. I could steal to use money to buy a new automobile to impress people with. Or I could steal to use money to try to build security for the future. Or I could steal to use money in order to use it in the sexual area. It's not the fact that I stole so much as why did I steal? And if we can ever get to the exact nature of these things, then we can begin to see what it is we really need to start working on. On page 76, if we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. In other words, we've asked ourselves those questions: have we tried to make mortar without sand, and etc. And if we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable.
Attention please, passenger Ernest LeBeau, cabin 3101. Please call radio 1190. Thank you. cabin steward Roberto Castro. Please call the radio. 1190. Thank you.
We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can He now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. Now that's all there is to step 6 in the big book. One little paragraph. And you'll notice he didn't mention defects of character at all. Step 6 said we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, but he doesn't even mention defects of character here. What he does mention are those things which we have admitted are objectionable. Now surely in step 4 and 5, if we've been able to see selfishness is what causes us to harm people, and they retaliate, then surely selfishness has become objectionable to us. If we've been able to see the dishonesty of our past life and what dishonesty does to us and other people, then surely that dishonesty has become objectionable to us. If we've been able to see where operating on fear has created the majority of our problems, then by now surely we want to get rid of that fear. If we've been able to see where inconsideration of other people causes us to do the things that create the problems, then surely by now we're ready to start getting rid of some of that stuff. But the book always recognizes that self cannot overcome self. It says if we are not willing, we ask God to help us be willing. Now, the book faces the fact that some of these things that we do, which create problems for us, some of them are enjoyable. And let's face it, once in a while they are so damned enjoyable, we really don't want to get rid of them. Even though we know what they're going to bring in the future, the pleasure of indulging in some of that is so great that we still may not want to turn some of those things loose. And since self cannot overcome self, the only way that we can become willing to turn them loose in some cases is to ask God to help us be willing to be willing. You know, if you've lived dishonest all your life, then thinking about living honest brings a lot of fear. You know, how the hell am I going to make a living honest if I've been dishonest all my life? If you've been selfish all your life, then what's life going to be if you have to take the stuff that you want and give it to other people? That brings a lot of fear. If you've been operating on fear all your life, what's life going to be like if you have to get up and do some of those things that you always was afraid to do before and have to actually practice courage? You know, sometimes we human beings would rather stay in the suffering and the pain than take the chance on changing and becoming something different. Because after all, we know what the suffering and pain is, and we don't know what the something different would be. And sometimes we have difficulty here in wanting to turn loose of these character defects, but surely by now we can begin to see we need to, and they should be objectionable to us. And if they're not, we ask God to help us be willing to be willing. Now, when ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character. Whoop, that isn't what 7 says, is it? Step 7 said shortcomings. But here in the narrative, he mentions defects of character, which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have then completed step 7. You see, Bill has used these words interchangeably. He didn't pay any attention to where they are. In one place he'll use them in 7, and another one he'll use them in 6. I got so intrigued with this that I went to the 12 and 12 and I looked up step 7 to see how many times he used the word shortcoming. And you hardly even see that word in the 12 and 12 until the last paragraph on step 7. He then begins to talk about shortcomings. Up until then, he talked about defects of character. So really, he paid no attention. And I think it's obvious that in his mind, they were the same thing. In 6, we get ready to have them removed. In 7, we ask God to take them away. And bang, bang, we have then completed step 7. Now, that's all there is to 6 and 7. Very, very simple steps. But I think they're probably the hardest steps of the whole bunch, because they're things that I think we're going to have to work on for the rest of our life. You know, many of us would like to take step 6 and 7 and say to God, here I am, take all of me, good and bad, and give me the $29.95 special and make me as pure as the driven snow. But it really doesn't work that way. I don't think God's going to do for you and I what we can do for ourselves. Now, He'll do for us the things we can't do, but I don't think He'll do what we can do for ourselves. And I don't believe God can reach in our head and pluck out a character defect and leave a hole in our head. That hole is going to have to be filled with something. And the only thing it can possibly be filled with is the opposite of the character defect. And if I want God to take away my dishonesty, then chances are I'm going to have to do my part by trying to practice honesty. And for a guy that's been dishonest all of his life in the beginning, this is damn near impossible to do. And I found that I didn't have the strength and the power and the courage to practice honesty. What I had to do was ask God to give me the power, and then I had to exercise all the willpower that I could muster and start trying to be honest in any particular given situation. And I found that slowly, over a period of time, as God removed dishonesty, and as I did my part by trying to practice honesty, slowly I became a more honest human being. I think our mind is just like our body. Our mind is nothing more than a set of mental habits that have been ingrained in our personality throughout our entire lifetime. And if we're going to change those mental habits, we're going to have to work at it. We were not born sick. In order for me to become a completely dishonest human being, I had to work at that. Hell, I worked years to become that dishonest. And I'm going to have to turn right around and work for years to become honest again. I'm not going to get these things changed overnight. Now, if I want God to take away selfishness, then chances are I am going to have to start practicing unselfishness. And oh, that's hard for me to do. And I can't do that left on my own strength and my own power. I just don't have the power to do that. But with God's help, I can start trying to become unselfish in any particular given situation. Now, if I want to take God to take away fear, then I'm going to have to start practicing courage. I'm going to have to start kicking myself in the butt and say, get up and go do those things that you want to do, you need to do, you've always been afraid to do. Practice courage, and slowly, courage can start replacing fear. If I want God to take away my inconsideration of other people, I'm going to have to start considering always first what you want before I consider what I want. And oh, that's difficult for me to do. But slowly, as I don't lend thought to those old ideas, they begin to die in my head. And slowly, as I lend strength to the new ideas, they begin to grow in my head. And slowly the old me begins to die. And slowly it's replaced with another me. There's a fellow in the other big book, they asked him, they said, what is the secret of living? And he said, well, it's daily dying. You must die somewhere to be reborn somewhere else. And if I want to be reborn in my mind, in my personality, in my head, I must be willing to die in my head also. And I think now I understand what they say and how it works when they say some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil. We didn't want to change. I didn't come to AA to change. I came to AA to learn how to drink without getting drunk. And the next thing I knew, I got sober. And then the next damn thing I knew, I found the power greater than myself through the changing that takes place in this program. I really didn't intend to do that. And I really didn't want to do that. But I find that it can be done if I'm willing to do my part. All of these laws that we deal with that are natural laws, spiritual laws, whatever you want to call them, they apply to everything in the universe. And this idea of changing mental habits applies the same as it would to changing physical habits. Most of us today in our society, somewhere or other, we're into this weight loss thing. Somewhere we've all decided that to be excessively thin is beautiful. I don't know whether it is or not, but I know that we're all into a weight loss thing anymore. And you'll see things on television that says you can eat all of this you want to, And all of these foods you want to, and as long as you're taking this, you won't gain weight. You'll be able to, no, don't you believe that. That isn't true. Now, you might lose the weight of the money that comes out of your pocket, but you're not going to lose weight by eating all you want to. I don't care what it is you're using with it. There's only one way you lose weight. You lose weight by not eating what you want to eat, and by making yourself eat what you don't want to eat. And if you quit eating what you want to eat and make yourself eat what you don't want to eat, sooner or later you're going to lose weight by that process. It's a very simple thing. And those that are really into this and have worked it for years tell me that if you make yourself eat what you don't want to eat, that after a while, that becomes such an ingrained habit that you really like what you didn't like in the first place, and you don't like what you did like in the first place. And I think that's true in the mind also. There's only one way that I can change my mind, and that is don't do what I want to do. Because self-will always throws me in conflict with God's will and with other people. And then make myself, with God's help, do what I don't want to do. And then slowly, slowly, I can change from a selfish, self-centered human being into one who is a God-directed human being, one who does have tolerance, patience, love, and etc. But it's a lifetime job. But I do find that the rapidity of the change takes place with just exactly how hard and how fast I'm willing to work at it. If I don't work at it very hard, the change is going to be pretty slow. But if I want to change rapidly, then I work at it continually. And I find today that every time a question comes up as to whether I can be honest or dishonest, if I make myself be honest every time, then the change takes place pretty fast. My first inclination always is to be selfish. But if I'll stop and make myself be unselfish, then the change takes place pretty fast if I'll do that over and over. But I can't lose weight by just practicing my weight loss program part of the time, nor can I change my personality by practicing my personality change program just part of the time. Half measures availed us nothing. It's the only thing that I know of that you don't get out of it what you put into it. You either put it all into it, or you get nothing back out of it. And it is a process that I think you and I will continue for the rest of our life. I think God will never remove all self-will. You know, if He did, we wouldn't be human beings anymore. And I think we will fight self-will for the rest of our life. But slowly the job gets easier. And you know what I found? This thing that was so difficult for me to do before, this living honestly, I've slowly found that, hell, this is a good way to live. You know, I got up this morning and I didn't have to think, now, who did I lie to yesterday? What do I have to remember today in order to tell them to be sure that it's the same thing I told them yesterday? You know, that's the only thing wrong with lying. God, it's hard to remember what you said yesterday. The older you get, the harder it is to lie and remember. I didn't have to worry this morning about who I stole from. I didn't have to. I love to live honest because that gives me peace of mind, serenity, and happiness. You know, I finally found that there is a great amount of pleasure that comes from giving to other people. Now, I never knew that before. I thought the only way you got happy was to grab and hold on for yourself, but I realized today that giving to other people gives us a sense of satisfaction that you can't find in any other way. And I just love to do things for other people. And to do things for other people and expect nothing back in return, oh, what a change that is. Oh, I used to help people when I was drinking. But the only way I helped you is because, by God, you had something that I was going to get back. And if I didn't get it from you, to hell with you. I'm damn sure not going to help you the next time. Today, I just love to help people. And you know, I've even once in a great while, I can do something good for another human being, and I don't even have to tell them I did it. Now that is when I really can feel good. When I can do for you and not have to tell you what I've done, then I really feel good about me. So I have found that this really is the good way to live. This is the softer, easier way. These are the things that makes me happy and have peace of mind and serenity. The other kind of living, I wouldn't go back to it anymore for nothing in the world. But it's a job I'll always work at. Now, I think what we've really accomplished up to this point if we have carefully followed directions, if we've done these things to the best of our ability, I didn't really realize it, but what I'm doing is fitting myself back into the pattern that God intended for me to have in the first place. Now, I've heard all my life about human beings being tridimensional creatures. I've heard all my life about the spiritual dimension, the mental dimension, and the physical dimension. And I never did really understand what they were talking about, but today I kind of think I do. Now, the book tells us that within every human being, there is this thing called God, or the Spirit, or whatever you want to call it. Now, the only question is, if it's there, I'm going to have to live with it. Whether I like it or not is beside the point. If God dwells within me, then I'm going to have to live with God. And the only question is, do I live with God in harmony or disharmony? All my life before AA, I was in disharmony with this God. From the day that I could really begin to make those decisions and consciously decided to do the things that I wanted to do rather than to follow God's will, I was been in complete disharmony with Him forever. Also, every human being is born with a mind. Now, we act sometimes like we don't have one, but we all got one up here in our head. And it's not a question of whether we're going to have to live in this mental dimension or not. The only question is, do I live with my mind in harmony or disharmony? Always I've been in disharmony with my mind. Always doing things that I knew I shouldn't do. Always wanting this, wanting that, always restless, always irritable, always discontented, never felt good in my head, and I've always been in disharmony with my mind. All of us have to live in this world. All of us have to live in what is referred to as the physical dimension. For a long time, I thought that referred to my body only. But today I realize the physical dimension is everything in the world as we know it. The whole material world is the physical dimension. Now, the only question is, since we've got to live in it, the only question is, do we live in it in harmony or disharmony? Well, I was always in disharmony in the physical dimension. Never could get along with people, never could get along with anything, always fighting, and I've been sick in all three of these areas, and that's what my book tells me. Now, what we've really done, I think, we have in step 1, 2, and 3 straightened ourselves out in the spiritual dimension. Now, we only did that because we were forced into it. Because I became absolutely powerless over alcohol. And my life became unmanageable. I could no longer live it the way that I wanted to be living it. And I could no longer run the show myself. And slowly, in step 1, I begin to realize that I am powerless. My life is unmanageable. And I begin to realize that I can't do it on my own anymore. In step 2, I came to believe in this power greater than myself to restore me to sanity. In step 3, I made that decision. And what I really decided in step 3 was to let God be the director of my life. Now, for most of us, that's the first time in our life, or at least as far back as we can remember, that we've had that relationship with God, letting God be the director of our life. Now, since we made that decision, that removed a little bit of self-will. And it removed enough to let us start looking at ourselves in 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, we didn't look at our body, we looked at our mind in 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we found those things which create our troubles for us. We talked about them to another human being. We begin to be willing to get rid of them. We ask God to take them away. And gradually, as we work on it, we start getting well in our mind. Now, if we're right in the first dimension with God, and we're right in the mental dimension with our mind, then there's a possibility we'll be able to get right in our relationship with the world and everything else in it. But we had to do these first 2 first. You see, we differ from the professional field. The professional field says take the alcoholic and get them a good job, and then they won't have to drink. Or send them to a marriage counselor and straighten out their marital relations, and then they won't have to drink. Or do all these things materially for them, and then they won't have to drink. Well, you and I know that's not true. God, I worked on that for years. That outer circle up there, the physical, sociological relationship with the world and everything in it, I worked on that hard. I'd be standing there and I'd have a wife and a car and a job, And the next thing I'd know, I'd have a car and a job, and the wife would be gone. And oh my God, I would work hard at getting her back, and about the time I got her back, I'd have a wife and a car and no job. And then I'd work like hell to get a job, and about the time I got a job back, I'd have a job and a car and no wife again. Yeah, I never could get the outer circle straightened up, and the reason I couldn't is because I wouldn't straighten my head. AA works just ass backwards to the professional field. AA said, let's don't worry about that outer circle. AA said this is an inside job. Let's straighten up the inner being first. Let's get right with the spirit. And then if we're right with the spirit, we can get right with the head. And then if we're right with the head, we can get right with the world and everything in it. And if we can get right in all three of those areas, then for the first time in our life, from the majority of us, we have become whole, well human beings in all three areas of life. And that's the area that God designed me for. You see, this is nothing new. There's a fellow in that other big book said this years ago. Somebody asked him, how do you live? And he said, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul. That's step 1, 2, and 3. And then he said, with all thy mind, and that's 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then he said, thy neighbor as thyself, and that's 8 and 9. You see, that's a design for living that God intends for all human beings. So what we're really doing here is we're putting ourselves back together in all three areas of life. Now, I can't stop at the end of step 7. Because if I try to stop at the end of step 7, I'm going to continue to have conflict with people. And guilt and remorse from the things of the past are going to eat me up. And fear of what's going to happen to me if I run into those people is going to eat me up, and that's going to back up in my head and make me sick again. And if I get sick in my head, that's going to back up on the inside, and it's going to cut me off from the spirit, and sooner or later I'll go back to drinking. So if I want to live and be happy and free, I've got one more job to do in these steps. And that happens to be step 8 and 9, and they are designed to get me right in that outer circle or in my relationship with the world and everything in it. Now, nobody likes to make amends. I think we all recognize that. Nobody wants to go make apologies to people for what they've done in the past. Nobody wants to take today's money that we can use to go on a cruise and pay some sucker back for what we stole from him 10 years ago. Nobody wants to make restitution. But the world has always known if you want to be free from the past, the only way you can be free from it is to make restitution and get rid of that guilt and that remorse and that fear associated with the past. And the only way you get rid of that is to make restitution to the best of your ability. Now, God, alcoholics don't like the word restitution. And Bill knew that also, so that's why in steps 8 and 9, he didn't use restitution, which came out of the Oxford groups. He used the word amends. Now, we can, I don't know why, but we can swallow amends better than we can restitution. Step 8 is a very simple step. We've already done the majority of the work required for step 8. We've already made the list of people we have harmed when we took step 4. See, we found some of them on all 3 of those sheets. Maybe by now we've thought of a few more that we should put on there also. And if so, we put them on the sheets and we analyze them out like we did when we took step 4. The hard part about step 8 is to become willing to make amends to them all. You know, the making of the list is simple. The real key to step 8 is to become willing to make amends. On page 76 it says, now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. You see, this is one of the reasons for taking step 4 the way we took it in the big book. We not only have the list, but we saw in a majority of the cases those things were our fault. And when we could see that they were our fault, then we became willing to do something about it. If I had never taken 4, as the book says, there's some of these people I wouldn't even think about making amends to. Because some of those people hurt me also. But if I'm able to see through step 4 the part that I played, then that helps me become willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which is accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. And again, the book recognizes that self-will can't overcome self-will. It recognizes we don't want to do this. And it says if we're not willing to do so, we ask God for the willingness. And we ask until it comes. Now, that's really all there is to step 8. See, it's not hard at all. You got the list. You might need to add a few names on. I'm sure you'll be willing to make amends to some of them. And if you're not willing to make amends to them all, you ask until it comes. Now, I don't think we have to be, though, 100% willing to make amends to all to be able to start making amends. You know, if I'd had to wait for every one of them and be willing to make amends to all of them before I could make an amend to any of them, I probably never would have gotten any of them made at all. But I found out there were some of them on there that I really wanted to do something about. I needed to straighten up my relationship with Barbara. I was willing to make amends to Barbara. And I find that for Barbara, the only amend I could really make to her is to say, I'm sorry for what I've been in the past. I know that because of my alcoholism, I did some things that I normally would not do, and I know they hurt you, and God willing, I'm going to try to change and be a different person in the future. And hopefully you and I can develop a relationship again. See, there's some things that I did I couldn't tell Barbara about at all. And I couldn't in any way make restitution for the emotional pain that I caused her. The only thing I can do is tell her I'm sorry, and hopefully I'm going to be a different person in the future and life can be better. And you know, I found out that's all she really wanted in the first place. That's all she wants. I wanted to straighten things out fast with my kids because I love my kids. And I found out with my kids, that's the only thing I could do with them too, is just say, you know, I'm sorry for what I've been in the past. Because of my alcoholism, I know I did things that hurt you. But God willing, I'm going to be a different human being in the future. And I ask your forgiveness for the things that I've done that created harm for you. And that's all I could do for my kids. There's no way I can make restitution for the emotional harm I've caused them. But I can sure as hell say I'm sorry and ask their forgiveness. Now, I found as I began to make amends to those I wanted to, that slowly I became willing to make amends to other people also. And I found out that I began to make some amends to people that I thought I never would make amends to. And finally, through the working of this process, I became willing to make amends to all of them. I think the last person I made amends to was this guy named Vic. You know, the guy that I was going to kill. When I really looked him over and analyzed him in step 4, I found out that none of that was Vic's problem in the first place. Hell, it was all mine. I put myself in that position, and I put Vic in a position that he could do those things to me also. And I found it necessary for me to go tell Vic I was sorry. And you know what happened when I did? He said, Charlie, this has been eating me up for years. He said, I'm sorry also. He said, hell, I shouldn't have stole the money and run with it. And we made amends to each other, and we became instant friends again, and we've been that way ever since. You know, this thing really does work for those that are willing to work it. Step 9, I think, is one of the most important steps of the whole process, and apparently the writers of the book did too. Because there's as many pages devoted to step 9 as there are to any other step in the book. There's 6 or 7 pages here on step 9. Now, step 9 tells us first the kind of amends we need to make. Step 9 says we made direct amends. Now, the step originally read in the original manuscript, we made complete amends. And somebody said, oh, Bill, that sounds like such too absolute a thing. Let's get rid of complete and put direct. Basically, they both mean the same thing. I think there's 2 kinds of direct amends, and I think they're both addressed here in the book. One kind of direct amend is face-to-face, one-on-one, going directly to that person that I've harmed. The book tells me that if I had to, I could write a letter or something. But I think the only way that I'm going to get free of the guilt and the remorse associated with what I've done to you is, if I can possibly do so, go to you directly. And then when it's over with, there's never any question in my mind about how you received it, nor is there any question in my mind as to whether I have done my utmost or not. You know, if I write you a letter, I'm not really sure how you received it, nor am I sure that I've done the utmost to the best of my ability to make that amend. But if I see you one-on-one, face-to-face, then I know. Now, the question here is not really to make you like me. I hope you do. But the question is for me to get rid of my guilt and my remorse. And it seemed to me as the only way and the best way for me to make that amend is go to you directly one-on-one, and then when I'm through with that thing, then I know that I've done the best I can do. And whether you've accepted it or not, then becomes your problem. Hopefully you like me, but it really isn't necessary for you to like me in order for me to get rid of my guilt. A question came up the other day. Somebody said, well, could you make an amends by letter? And somebody answered back and said, well, sure, if you hurt them by letter, that would be okay. You know, most people we didn't hurt by letter. Most of them we hurt directly, one-on-one, face-to-face. An example of that, I think we'll find on page 77, middle paragraph, and about the middle of the middle paragraph. The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. It may be he's done us more harm than we've done him. And though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, we're still not too keen about admitting our faults. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It is harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply, we tell him that we will never get over drinking until we've done our utmost to straighten out the past. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so, never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Sometimes the man we're calling upon admits his own fault. So feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we are doing and wish us well. Occasionally they will offer assistance. It should not matter, however, if someone does throw us out of his office. We've made our demonstration, done our part. It's water over the dam. 2 or 3 of these people I went to, they said, Charley, I didn't much like you when you were drinking, and I'm not too damn crazy about you now. And I just about soon you'd leave me alone. And it's okay. That's all right. You see, I did my utmost to straighten out the past. And if they don't accept that, then they're sick also. And I don't let sick people make me sick anymore. You know, if they don't accept that, then that becomes their problem. I've done my best. That's one kind of direct amend. I think another kind of direct amend deals with money, deals with material things, and deals with equal restitution. Page 78, middle of the page. Most alcoholics owe money. I can't understand that, but some of us apparently do. We do not dodge our creditors. Telling them what we're trying to do, we make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we are sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go. For we're liable to drink if we're afraid to face them. A lot of alcoholics really don't want to make these monetary restitutions. Because in order to do so, you've got to take away from what you got today to pay back for what you stole in the past. And many of us would rather selfishly use that money for the things that we want to use it for today. Or sometimes we say, well, we couldn't do that because, my God, it's such a large amount of money. We never could pay that back. Maybe it's 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, $500,000. I don't know. Hell, we get into all kinds of deals. But I do know this. We could go to anybody regardless of the sum of money we owe them And we could say, I'm sorry for what I did, and I can't pay that amount back today, but I can pay you, and I will pay you $10 a week, or $20 a month, or whatever we can. And if we owe them money, chances are they would rather have a little bit than none whatsoever. And slowly, slowly, over a period of time, we can pay those people back. Now, what we would like to do as alcoholics is wait and get it all together in a sack and take it in and lay it on his desk and say, here's your damn money. But let's face it, we're not going to do that in the majority of the cases. Now, I have a fellow who lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a good friend. He's been in AA now well over 30 years. And when he was 29 years sober, he said, Charlie, I paid the last of them off last week. I said, Dan, how do you feel? And Dan said, I feel 8 foot tall. Dan was about 5'1". And he said, this is the first time in my life I can ever remember that I don't owe somebody something for what I stole from them in the past. It took him 29 years to pay it off. Most of them were oil debts from way back there, Jim, a long, long ways ago. I think we forget that from step 3 on, we're not by ourselves anymore. God's with us. And if we are to do these things, God will make it possible for us to do so. The main question is, are we willing to do so? I was working with a boy not long ago from Brainerd, Minnesota. He was down in our part of the country on construction work. He had been in AA 3 or 4 years. He had never taken step 4 and 5. And he heard me talking about it, and he asked me if I'd take a step 5 with him. I said, I sure will, if you'll take 4 the way the big book says to do it. Showed him how. He took 4. He came to me for 5. And one of his main problems was people he had stolen money from in the past. This young fella is about 29, 30 years old. He's afraid to go into Brainerd, Minnesota, because he knows that every time he goes in there, he runs into people he owes money to, and they say, where in the hell's my money? Now, this was really a big deal for him, and he was about to get drunk. And I said, let's sit down and make a list of all the people you owe and how much you owe. And we ended up with about 15 people, and the total damn debt was less than $1,000. It had gotten such a big thing in his head, he didn't even know where in the hell to start. And I said, well, here's what we're going to do. I said, when are you going back home again? And he gave me the date he planned to go home. I said, we're going to list these 15 people. And we're going to put out here at the side the amount of money that you owe each one. And when you go home, you're going to go talk to all 15 of those people. And you're going to tell this one that you owe 100 to that you're going to pay him $2 a week. And you're going to tell this one down here that you owe 50 to that you're just going to pay him $1 a week. But you're going to pay every one of these people something every week. And the next thing you know, you'll have them paid off. And he went home for 2 or 3 weeks, and he came back, and I never saw a guy that looked any more different in his life than he did. The whole burden had been removed. He had talked to every one of those people, arranged a deal, and started paying them off. And he called me not long ago from Brainerd. And he said, I just wanted you to know that I've paid every one of them son of a bitches and don't know nobody nothing. And damn, he felt good. But that's the thing we do with this kind of stuff. It just eats us up. And usually it's not such a big deal anyhow, if we will honestly look at it and be willing to do something about it. On these other pages, it tells us also not only when we should make amends, but it tells us when not to. It says we may direct amends wherever possible. Not whenever possible, but wherever possible. Many people read that step and they read whenever instead of wherever. It looks like whenever would fit better, but whenever wouldn't work for us. Can't you just imagine telling alcoholics to make amends whenever they want to? No. Wherever we possibly can, that's where we make them. But then it tells us when not to make them also. It says, except when to do so would injure them or others. You know, there's some people, if we start making amends to them, we're going to injure them even further yet. And just as importantly, it may injure some other people. And the book gives me example after example after example of when not to make an amends, how to go about making amends which involve other people. It talks about things from the past where we've ruined another person's reputation. We're in a new business, new partner, new marriage, and we're afraid to try to make amends, afraid it would destroy the new relationship with the present. And it tells us to go talk to the people involved first and get their okay before we try to do something like that. On page 80, it talks about sex outside of marriage. The chances are that we have domestic troubles. Perhaps we're mixed up with women in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. Now, I don't know of many people in AA that have done that, but some did, probably. We doubt if disrespect alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people. But drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. How could she be anything else? The husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself. He commences to look around in the nightclubs or their equivalent for something besides liquor. Perhaps he's having a secret and exciting affair with a girl who understands. In fairness, we must say that she may understand. But what are we going to do about a thing like that? A man so involved often feels very remorseful at times, especially if he's married to a loyal and courageous girl who has literally gone through hell for him. Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. If we're sure that our wife does not know, should we tell her? Not always, we think. If she knows in a general way that we have been wild, should we tell her in detail? Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She'll want to know who the woman is and where she is. And we feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We're sorry for what we've done, and God willing, it should not be repeated. You know, it would be ridiculous for me to walk into my wife and in my zeal to be forgiven, start laying these things out in detail by the dates and by the person and so on and so forth. All I'm going to do is hurt her that much further. Now, she doesn't really need to have to know in detail. Let's face it, we're not married to a bunch of idiots. Hell, they know what we do. But I would much rather have my wife have suspicion of what I've done than to have her know in detail, name by name, date by date, place by place. Suspicion doesn't hurt near as bad as the real concrete full knowledge would hurt. Besides, if I involve other people in this thing, I'm probably going to create harm for them too. You know, some of our spouses, they may do a little retaliation of their own also. And we may end up hurting other people when we had no intention of doing that at all. And if we do that, then we're going to get to feel sorry about that and have to go make some more amends later on. I think we need to be very careful in this area to ensure that we're not going to hurt another human being. Joe and I both agree on this, and in working with lots of people in the past, I'm sure Sid will agree with this also, I've never yet had anybody ask me a question about an amend, whether to make it or not make it, whether it would hurt another human being or not hurt, that we couldn't find the answer in the big book. There's 6 or 7 pages here, and I've never yet had one of those questions that we couldn't go to the book and find the answer. Extremely important if we will follow the book. Page 83. Third paragraph. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. Some people we can't make amends to, they're already dead. They're gone. Some people, to try to make an amend to them would injure them or somebody else. And we really can't make that amend, but we don't worry about it. If we can say to ourselves we would make them if we could, and honestly mean that, and hold ourselves in readiness to be able to make them wherever it becomes possible to do so. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. There may be a valid reason for postponing in some cases. But we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our own feet. We don't crawl before anyone. Another mistake I see in this area, I see in our zeal to get everybody to like us, sometimes people, if they don't accept our amends, we tend to want to go back to them over and over and over and practically beg them to forgive us. And I don't think we need to do that. You know, as God's people, we stand on our own feet. And we make our amends, and when we do so, we've done our dead level best to straighten out the past. And if they don't accept that from us, then that really is their problem. I think there's one person we owe an amend to just as much as anybody else, and that's to ourselves. I don't go with the theory that I didn't hurt anybody but me during my drinking. That isn't true. I hurt a hell of a lot of people. But I'll guarantee you I hurt me just as bad as I ever hurt anybody else. And I think the finest amend that I can make to me is to make my amends to other people and get rid of the guilt and the remorse and the fear associated with the past. And that gives me peace of mind. And that's the best amend I can make to me, is to be happy with me. You know, today in my life, there's not a place in the world that I know of that I can't go and feel comfortable. I used to in my hometown. I had to walk down the back alleys. There's a bunch of people there I didn't want to see. And I didn't want them to see me because I didn't know what the hell they was going to say when they run into me. One of them was the damn banker. Now, I never wanted to see that banker. I never wanted to see that guy at the filling station that I owed some money to. I sure as hell didn't want to go into the guy at the liquor store that I'd run up that damn bill with and fail to pay him. Today, I can go anywhere and not be afraid to run into anybody. And I think that's the finest amend that I can make to me. I am free of the past. I have no guilt. I have no remorse associated with the things in the past. Now, I'm not proud of them, but I'm no longer eaten up by those things. And I think that's the finest amend we can make to ourselves. And we promised in the beginning that if we would first believe, and that if we would then decide, and that if we would then take action, that we could expect to get certain results from that. Just like Columbus had to do. He had to believe and decide and act before he got results. Now, the results that you and I will get, since we are now well in all three areas of life, since we've now put ourselves back together as God intended for us to be in the first place, the results are going to be found at the bottom of page 83. This is the way we will feel if we have done these first 9 steps to the utmost of our ability. Who would like to read the promises? Do I have a volunteer? Back here. Okay.
Hi, I'm Evelyn. I'm an alcoholic.
A little bit.
If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Beautiful. Is there anything in those deal with the body? They all deal with the mind, don't they? Surely, if we've received those promises in our life, if those things have become a part of our mind, then surely we have undergone a personality change. From people who used to be restless, irritable, and discontented, from people who used to be filled with shame, fear, guilt, and remorse, to go from that state to the state of one who has received, God, there's got to have been a great change take place there somewhere. You see, we've been building this wonderfully effective spiritual structure all the way through the steps, and now we're passing through that sucker. Now we're going through the arch. And now we've passed through to freedom, because we're no longer the way we used to be if we receive the promises. And there's only one stipulation on the promises. You only got to do one thing to get the promises, and that is to work for them. Now, how many of you remember back, I know some of you are as old or older than I am, how many of you remember back to the days when going to the movie on Saturday afternoon to see the serial movie like Tom Mix or so on and so forth was the greatest thing we could do? And if you didn't get to go to that movie, hell, don't bother to go to Sunday school or school on Monday, because you ain't got nothing to talk about to the rest of the kids if you missed the movie. I used to get up on Saturday morning and I'd say, Mama, can I go to the movie today? And she'd say, yes, son, you're going to get to go to the movie after. And she would lay out a whole series of steps that I would have to take. You know, after you mow the grass, after you help me with the dishes, after you empty the water pan into the icebox, after you feed the chickens, after. And when I'd get all those things done, then Mother would give me a quarter. And I'd go to the movie, and I could get in that movie for a nickel, sometimes a dime, but usually a nickel. I could buy a bag of popcorn for a nickel. I could buy a candy bar for a nickel. and I could buy a big RC cola for another. Boy, that quarter went a hell of a long ways. And I really lived it up all Saturday afternoon, but it was always after I had done something. Promises always come after, never before. This is why when I saw that guy reading the other day in the hospital to a sick alcoholic in the bed, reading the promises to him, I said, well, what the hell, did you read him what went before the promises? That's what he's got to know. He can't get the promises unless he does the work. And that's why I go into the fellowship only will not bring about a personality change. Personality change comes as the result. Now, I'm going to read them again. And I want to read them for two reasons. Number one, I like the way I read them. But the real reason is I want to add some words to them. And the words I'm going to add to them is whenever I took a drink of alcohol. Now, I'm talking about when I was 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. When I was young and alcohol was my friend. When it would allow me to do the things that I couldn't do on my own strength unaided. When it would make me 6 foot tall and Fred Astaire on the dance floor. And the world's greatest lover in the back seat of that 36 Chevrolet. Before alcohol turned against me. This is the way I used to feel. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I knew a new freedom and a new happiness. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I did not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I comprehended the word serenity and I knew peace. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, no matter how far down the scale I had gone, I could see how my experience would benefit others. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity would disappear. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in my fellows. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, self-seeking would slip away. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, my whole attitude and outlook upon life would change. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, fear of people and of economic insecurity would leave me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would suddenly realize that alcohol was doing for me what I could not do for myself. No wonder I love to drink alcohol. The alcohol gave me in the beginning exactly what I always wanted, that sense of ease and comfort, that ability to function in society. And looking back in my life today, I don't think I could have functioned with alcohol. I think I would have been an absolute raving maniac without alcohol or something like it. And it gave me all these things that I was searching for. And I loved what alcohol did for me. And for many years, it would repeat this for me over and over and over and over. But one day alcohol turned against me. And alcohol began to destroy me. And it quit doing these things and started doing bad things for me. And I spent the rest of my drinking career trying to find a way to recapture that feeling that alcohol gave me. And I tried everything in the world. I tried everything I could find to drink, different mixtures of drinks, different ways of drinking, different times of drinking, to go back and recapture this feeling. And I didn't know I was alcoholic, see? I didn't know that those days were gone. I didn't know I couldn't go back. Now, I came to AA, and you showed me a simple program of action. And you showed me how if I would take it, that I could recapture what I had always received good from alcohol in my life without drinking. And I used the first 9 steps. And from the first 9 steps, I get the same sense of ease and comfort. I get the same thing good that I ever got from alcohol, period. No wonder I love the first 9 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you know, the beautiful part about them is, up until today, they've never turned against me. I've never been placed in a jailhouse because of the first 9 steps. I've never been drug into a divorce court over the first 9 steps. I have never vomited. Damn near did a time or two, but I've never really vomited over the first 9 steps. See, this is the real miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. No wonder we can stay sober. If we can feel this good, sober, then we don't need to drink alcohol to change the way that we feel. Nor take drugs, nor gamble, nor overeat, nor do any of those things that we used to use to make us feel so good, because we get it from the first 9 steps. These are the results of the action that we have taken in steps 4 through 9. Now, if we aren't careful, we'll quit right here. For most of us, God being sober and feeling this way, this is something we've never experienced before. And we tend to say to ourselves, well, it can't possibly get any better. And there's no need to do anything else because I've got everything I want right here. But if we do that, we're going to be in bad trouble because there is another universal law that applies also. Bill talked twice in his story, or once in his story and once in chapter 2, about a fourth dimension of existence. See, we've looked at the normal three. There they are up on the board. But there is another dimension of existence for human beings that most people don't know about, don't dream about, and never get into. And if we could move further than this and get into a fourth dimension of living, we can find a way to live that is indescribably wonderful. The universal law that makes me want to continue further is this: nothing ever stays the same. Everything in our universe is either expanding or contracting, growing or dying, progressing or regressing. You know, you can look at a tree, and a tree is one of the most beautiful things God ever created. And a tree will grow and grow and grow, and each day it becomes more and more beautiful until the day it quits growing. And the day it quits growing, it begins to die. And eventually it reverts back to whence it came. The human body, I think the human body is the most marvelous creation that God ever put on the face of the earth. And it's a beautiful thing, and it grows and it grows and it grows until it gets to be about 19 years old. And the day it quits growing, it begins to die. And eventually returns back from where it came also. Now, all these laws are universal, so whatever applies to the body or the tree applies to the mind also. We have grown tremendously if we receive these promises. And we can't stop here. Because if we do, we will begin to regress. We'll begin to have trouble with people. And that will begin to back up in our mind, and then that will block us off from the Spirit. And then sooner or later we go back to drinking. Now, people will tell you that the last 3 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are maintenance steps. And I don't believe that. In the first place, there's no such thing as maintenance. Now, I know it's a word we use, but maintenance means to keep as is. And you can't keep anything as is. The best you can possibly do is try to maintain. You'll never maintain. You and I are going to do one of two things. We're either going to continue our spiritual growth from step 9 on, or we're going to start regressing from step 9 back, one of the two. So let's look at the last 3 as growth steps, and let's see if we can't see in the book where that's what they really are. On page 84, this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commit this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. You see, we've had a spiritual awakening right here. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness, not to maintain, not to stay where we are, but to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Now, very carefully watch these words. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. What step did we use for that? Step 4, didn't we? Okay. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. What steps did we use for that? 6 and 7. We discuss them with someone immediately. And what step was that? 5. And make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. And what steps were those 2? 8 and 9. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. I think what this is telling me is that if I practice step 10 the way my book says, I will be practicing steps 4 through 9 continually for the rest of my life on a daily basis, 24 hours a day. Now, we made a mistake in AA. The 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous appeared to the world first in this book that you and I have in front of us. And then we took them out of the book and put them on little cards we carry in our purses and wallets, and we put them on shades and signs that we hang on the wall. Now, they look good there, and I don't really see anything wrong with them being there. But the mistake we made is when we took them out of the book, we left the instructions in the book. We didn't take the instructions out of the book and put up there with steps. Now, we go into an AA meeting, we look up on the wall, there's the 12 steps, we read them, we interpret them in our head as to what they mean, and then we try to work them based upon what we think they mean. And the only instructions for the working of the steps are in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh, the 12 and 12 is a beautiful book. But there's no instructions on how to work the steps in the 12 and 12. They are essays further explaining the steps. The only directions are here in the book. Somewhere we got the idea of reading step 10 off the wall, where it said continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. We got the idea that the only thing we're looking for in step 10 is to see if we're wrong or if we've hurt somebody, and if so, admit that promptly. Well, we can see that that isn't true according to the book. We're not looking just to see if we've hurt anybody. We're looking continually for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. I defy anybody in this room to continually watch yourself for those things and not learn more about yourself. When they crop up and ask God at once to take them away, I defy anybody to do that and have them not become less and less and less as time goes by. We discuss them with someone immediately. I defy anybody to do that and not learn more about yourself. And then we make amends quickly if we've harmed anybody. And I defy anybody to do that and not have your relationship with the world and the people in it become better and better and better. You see, 10 is a definite growth factor. Work the way the book says to work it. Somewhere we got the idea up here on step 10 on the wall that you don't even have to do that little deal until you go to bed at night. Well, they don't say anything about going to bed at night here. At my age, you don't get in trouble in bed very much anyhow anymore, you know. Hell, my problem is in the daytime. And it doesn't make any sense for me to get screwed up at 8:30 in the morning and stay sick all day long and waste another day and wait till I go to bed at night to do something about it. You see, I can't have just one problem anyhow. If I get screwed up at 8:30, if I don't do something about it, I'll bet your boots by 9:30 something else has come up I didn't like either. And by 1 o'clock, I've done something that hurt another human being, too. And by 3 o'clock, I'm getting into hell. By nighttime, I'm a damn basket case. Why wait? Why waste any more time? Why spend another day in anxiety and worry and fear? Why not stop right now and do something about it? Ask God to take it away. Discuss it with another human being immediately. Hopefully another AA member if I can. And make amends quickly. And within 15 or 20 minutes, I can have that out of my head, and I'm through with it, and the rest of the day is great. Now, be careful. Be careful. Because if you buy into this, you're going to accept the most awesome responsibility you've ever had in your life. Because if you buy into this, you're going to have to accept the responsibility that you are responsible for the way that you feel and the things that you do. See, before I wasn't responsible because I didn't know any better. Before, when I got mad, I didn't know what to do about that. Before, when I was afraid, I didn't know how to handle that. Before, when I hurt somebody else, I didn't know what to do about it. But today, I know what to do about it. I can use step 10, and I can be through with it in just a few minutes. And the rest of my day can be great. Now, that means I can't blame it on him, or her, or God, or them, or anything else. I can only blame it on me. If I'm screwed up today, it is because I have chosen to be screwed up today. Because I know the way out of that mess. And I don't have to worry. I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be resentful. I don't have to be hurting people if I'm willing to do the things my book tells me to do. Now, that's a hell of a responsibility for people like us to accept. That we are responsible for the way we feel. And let's face it, sometimes that's the way I want to be. You know, we're all human beings. There's times that I love to be mad. Because when I'm mad, I can romp and stomp and raise hell, and that gives me a comfortable feeling of superiority over other people. Yeah. And then if I'm mad enough, I can use that as an excuse to go out there and do something that I shouldn't have been doing that I've been wanting to do, and if I'm not careful, that's exactly what I'll do with it. So sometimes I love to be mad. Sometimes I love to be afraid, because I can use fear to justify not doing something I ought to go do. And just as importantly, I can use fear to justify doing something that I shouldn't be doing. And sometimes I love to be afraid. But today I realize when I am that way, it is because I have chosen to be that way. Nobody else can do that to me if I don't want them to do that. It's up to me to make that decision. And God, I love this. I don't know about you, but I love to feel good. And I'm just not going to be that way anymore if I can possibly keep from it. Now, after we've practiced step 10 for a while, we have another completely new set of promises. You know, I hear about those on 83 and 84 all the time. I never hear about the promises on 84 and 85. Let's see what they are, starting in the last paragraph on page 84. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. My God, what a promise. I've fought all my life. As a little old scrawny kid growing up, everybody in the world picked on me, and I've had to fight ever since the day I was born. And I love to live. I love to live without fighting, you know. We've ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. You see, step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now it has returned to us. We will, now that we're sane, we will seldom be interested in liquor. We can see the truth about alcohol now. If tempted, we recoil from it as if from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid, and that is our experience, and that is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. Now, this is the double miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. Remember back on page 45, we read a statement that said the main object of this book is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. And we emphasized it didn't say which will help you solve it or will enable you to solve it. It said which will solve your problem. Somewhere between page 45 and 85 in the big book, I woke up one morning and I said, Charlie, there's something strange in your life today. And I said, what is it? And I said, you don't want to take a drink. And I said, how long has it been since you wanted to take a drink? And you know, I couldn't remember. I could not remember. Somewhere between those pages in the working of this program, that God has solved the problem. He reached into my head and he plucked out the obsession to drink. Now, you can't have a vacuum in your head. And when he plucked the obsession to drink out, it was replaced with another obsession, and that is an obsession to stay sober. That is an obsession to stay sober. And I think my mind is as obsessed today with sobriety as it was ever obsessed with drinking alcohol. And that's one of the good obsessions. Because, you know, sometimes an obsession can keep you seeing the truth. Not always does it have to make you believe a lie. Sometimes it can help you see the truth. And God has done this with really not a hell of a lot of thought and effort on my part. All I did was follow a few simple rules as laid out in the big book Alcoholics Anonymous. This is the miracle of AA. The reason we don't drink today is because we don't want to drink. Hell, if you and I wanted to drink, I know what we'd do. We'd go up there to one of those bars and we'd have us a drink. We wouldn't have stayed here a week and stayed sober. Christ, there's no way that I could have done that, wanting to drink every day on a daily basis. Only reason I stayed sober on this ship is because I don't want to drink. Don't need to drink. Have no desire to drink whatsoever. God did that for me. I couldn't do it. When you get this in your life, this set of promises in your life, again, be careful. Because it is so good. It is so good that you may say, this can't be any better. This can't possibly be any better. But it can be better. And if you don't go on to experience it, according to the book, you're going to start sliding back again. You see, there's really no stopping point. It's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We're not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Now there's the word maintenance, one day at a time. You and I are sitting in a beautiful ship today. And over a period of years, I imagine they'll spend millions and millions and millions of dollars maintaining this ship. Sooner or later, this sucker's going to fall apart. You can't maintain on a permanent basis, but you can one day at a time. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. My God, isn't this marvelous? In step 3, I made a decision to turn my will over to the care and direction of God as I understand Him. Now that my will has been straightened up, here on page 85, they're giving it back to me now. Yeah, now I can use it and use it for the proper purposes. The proper purpose is to try to find out God's will in my life on a daily basis constantly. But if you'll notice the perfection of our book, On page 85, he gives me my will back. But on page 84, he gave me my sanity back. It'd have been hell to have it reversed, wouldn't it? Now that I'm sane on 84, now I can have my will back on 85. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction, not suggestions, but direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we've carefully followed directions, not suggestions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God-conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. But we must go further, and that means more action. A vital sixth sense, a God-consciousness, a receiving of direction from a power greater than human power. All my life I've heard of the five senses. And everything I've ever known before AA, I learned through those five senses. I learned through the sense of feel. I learned through the sense of smell. I learned through the sense of seeing and hearing and tasting. And everything I ever knew, that is the way I had learned those things. But, that's just a limited amount of knowledge. What I learn here on this material world we live in through the normal five senses is just a very limited amount of knowledge. Humankind knows very little. If I knew everything that all human beings know, I still wouldn't know a hell of a lot. When it comes to the full knowledge of the universe, there's only one that has full knowledge, and that's God. If it's true that God dwells within me, and I believe He does, and if it's true that God has all knowledge and all power, and I believe that He does, then it stands to reason that it would also be true that within me I have all the knowledge and all the power that I would ever need to solve any problem that I could ever have in the future, if I could just tap into that knowledge and power. A vital sixth sense of direction. A new way to learn. A new way to get information. A new sense of direction other than the normal five. And it's always been known that you do this through prayer and meditation. And for we people in AA, most of us have had great difficulties with prayer and meditation. I know in my own case, even though I was raised in a Southern Baptist church, I knew basically only two prayers when I got to AA. One of them, probably a lot of you used it, said, "Now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to keep." I don't even like that prayer anymore. That's dealing with death, and I'm not into that very much anymore. The other prayer that I use constantly in my life, and I'm sure you used it too, it said, "God, if you get me out of this damn mess, I swear I'll never do it again." And that was the extent of my prayer life. Meditation I knew nothing about at all.
This will conclude tape number 10 in Charley's discussion of Chapter 6, Into Action, Steps 6 through 10. Please go to tape number 11 of this 12-tape set of recordings for his concluding discussion of Chapter 6, Into Action, Step 11, and Chapter 7, Working with Others, Step 12.